Thank you for your patience. Mr. Chair, we are live now whenever you're ready.
Okay, so for the record, we already have approved the minutes. We have one old item coming before us, and I will defer to a sponsor, whoever would like to speak. Looking for any hands? Okay, Sarah, I do not see any hands.
Hold on just a minute, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Ms. Mogan?
Thank you. I don't know how I got blocked. I'm sorry about that. I think we discussed this last week, and I think hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to review the legislation. Most of us know new Judge Williams, Judge James R. Williams, and all of his good work that he did for this community. Not only that, if you didn't know him personally, if you didn't have the opportunity or the pleasure of meeting him, you certainly can see the work that he has done in Akron. If you look at Channelwood Village, the name was changed. You look at Williams Tower next door to Channelwood Village. All of those are products of something he started years ago when he was president of AFA. He started doing public housing through their Alpha Homes program, and not only in the city of Akron, but you find the homes in Chicago and different parts of the country and of the state. We can talk about Judge Williams being the first African American to be the council person of Ward 4. He came here from Columbus, Mississippi, and I came from Mississippi too, so I know that we didn't have the opportunities that we've had here in this state and city. So Judge Williams was a community activist, very, very busy in the community and very good public servant. And we would like to see this Lawton Street Community Center renamed in his honor as one way of saying thank you to him and thank you to his family for the sacrifices they made. But again, if you read the legislation, you saw all of the good things that he has done and the road that he traveled to get to where he was. The only African American to serve at the county level of Common Pleas Court in Summit County. So, and that was, again, a huge step forward for all of us. But anyway, and that is just part of just highlighting a few of those areas that I can recall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, looking around for any other hands. Mr. Neal, I did see your hand up, but it's not up now. I don't know if it disappeared or what.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I just echo the sentiments of my colleague. I mean, she covered just about everything. I mean, Judge Williams' life of service was not just on the local level, the state level, but on the national level. I believe I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mobine. I believe he served as also the national president of his fraternity, Alpha Fraternity.
Exactly.
And Alpha Phi Alpha Homes, I mean, the way they blessed not just our local community, but cities across the country. I don't know how many of you saw the documentary, An Answer for Akron, that talked about the impact of Alpha Phi Alpha Homes and how that fraternity was a first to receive federal funds to do the type of housing that they did. And Judge Williams was a part of that, the cornerstone, a part of that work. But more so, even just locally, as we look at a way to honor him, I don't think it's anything more fitting than in the ward in which he lived, where he served as a councilman, to have Lawton Street Community Center, which is just named after a street, named after Judge James R. Williams. So with that, sir, we can take any questions, but as Councilwoman Amobian spoke, the resolution speaks of his many accomplishments.
Yeah, Mr. Yu, you brought up a question. I know at one time there had to be a Mr. Lawton somewhere. I know we have a Lawton Street, and then we have, the community center. Has anybody been able to identify? I asked this question in a school board meeting not too long ago. A building was being renamed. Has anybody been able to identify who or what Lawton was?
Well, I tell you, did ask that. That's one of the questions that was asked when I said we started to say months ago. Just to find out that type of information. That being said, we're not changing the name of the street. The street would still remain Lawton. Although to be honest, sir, I don't know that history. I reached out to find out. Part of our protocol was never given, received that information.
Just aware, I know one day I was walking through Glendale Cemetery of all places, and I kept seeing all these names, and I thought, oh, there's a street named after that person. I didn't know if anybody had any knowledge of who Lawton was. Okay, I'll go to Ms. Somerville, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank, Councilwoman Amovian and Councilman Neal for bringing this in. And I think there's no question that the Honorable Judge Williams has made significant contributions to the city. And I know the city has recognized those contributions in the investment that they made, $600,000 in the Williams Towers. And so I know I am very grateful that is located in my district right there on the corner of Thornton and Barges. The one thing I think that we do need to kind of think about, and I don't know if other council members are in this position as I am, we get calls from others, right? Families who want to memorialize their loved ones too that have done great things in Akron. And just the challenge of, there not really being enough real estate to do all of those things. And so just something to kind of keep in mind. But again, there's no question that the contributions that the judge has made to the city of Akron. I think we just have to keep in mind, that moving forward, since we don't have any policy or any common practice of naming buildings after individuals.
Thank you. Sarah, with the Akron City logo, there is a hand up. I'm not sure who that represents.
Yes, Councilman Lombardo has his hand raised here in the council chambers.
Okay, very good. Councilman Lombardo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The questions I was going to ask, I think, are answered because I just wanted to know, who, or, Lawton Community Center, what was that named after? So we got that answer. That was just a street. There's no person. And then the other question I had is, again, we have Williams Tower on the corner of Thornton and Barges. Is there any other Williams properties? That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, I will come now to Ms. Holland.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to join the many astute comments about Judge Williams' life of service and just add a few items of my own. In the 1960s, Judge Williams was a law school mate of my father's. And in that same period of time, there were a number of firsts at Akron Law, which at the time was steadily making its way in the conversion from a night law school program to a full service night and day law school, and now considered to be a very fine place of legal education. But during that same time, Akron Law welcomed its first women students. It welcomed, so many firsts in those classes, and I heard so many fond stories from my own father about Judge Williams back then. And then fast forward many, many years, when I returned to Akron in the 90s, I had spent years enforcing the equal employment opportunity laws for the United States in Washington, D.C., and then in Columbus on behalf of the state of Ohio as an assistant attorney general. And I came to Akron and entered private law practice and represented individuals who had experienced discrimination on the basis of age, sex, race, religion, national origin, and disability, and brought my cases in Summit County Common Pleas Court and federal court as well, and had many cases in Judge Williams' court. And one of the things that I think is really important to say about him, in addition to his many incredible achievements, is that this was a man at a time when our common pleas bench was very different, who understood the importance of hearing these cases and recognizing the struggle for equity, for equality, that he took brave positions on difficult issues long before these issues were very deservedly a central part of our conversation as a society, as members of government. He not only represented several firsts in terms of accomplishments as a legal scholar and a leader, but he also opened doors and provided opportunity for all of us to understand exactly what this country offers and represents. And I just really felt a need to share this with my colleagues. I know that this is a complex situation, but I think that one of the things that's been on my mind for many days is the idea that honor, like compassion, is not pie. There's no limit to it. There's enough, and in fact, limitless quantities for everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you're
Let
on.
me come now to Mr. Mallett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. It's hard sometimes to find universal truth in these days, but I think the closest thing is when you go to all kinds of different folks and they all speak about someone in the same way. And that's the case when you talk to folks about Judge Williams, is that everyone speaks about him with the same level of reverence, the same level of respect, the same level of thoughtfulness. And, I hope that, his memory is a blessing to his family, but also to all of us. I think it's, perfectly appropriate that we as a city are in some way of honoring him. I think that, given his service as the World Court council person, that, a community center being named after him is perfectly appropriate. And certainly, no honor could really do justice to, the august heights that he reached in so many different ways. So just want to, speak in favor of that and give my best wishes to his family.
Thank you. I see another hand raised from within the chambers.
Yes. Mr. Chair, Councilwoman Mosley has her hand raised.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mosley?
Thank you. I want to echo the sentiments from my colleagues as it relates to Judge Williams, who I've known he and his family for many years. I know there was a question about a building already being named after him, but I don't think one has anything to do with the other. That building was named because he was one of the founders of Alpha Phi Alpha. Building was named after him because he was the national president for Alpha Phi Alpha, not named from the city, but from that organization. This is not hard. This is not a hard thing to do, to honor someone who gave so much to the city. And I think we need to think about the things that he gave to this city instead of thinking of ways not to name a community center after him. I think that's the least we can do for all that he's done for this community and for this city, and the work that he put forth, bringing other law students to the bench. If you talk to many of these now judges, they will tell you Judge Williams is the reason why they wanted to be a judge. He was an advocate for the city. He was an advocate for the state, someone who was appointed by President Jimmy Carter. And we're asking for a community center, an award that he was the first to represent as an African American, to be named after him. I just don't see what the problem is. I don't think we should be working so hard to vote it down. We should be working hard to do something in his honor. And yeah, we have other people who come before us wanting things named after family members. I've had people wanting streets named after family members, but we're talking about someone who was a giant in this city. We're not just saying name a building after this guy named James Williams. We're talking about naming a community center and an award that he represented as the first African-American man and the first African-American male who was many firsts for this city. I just don't think it's that hard. It's okay to do what's right. It's okay to do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Now come back to Ms. Amodia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted just to mention during my 16 years on the school board that we did have school buildings that were named for streets and areas. And when it was time to honor Mr. Salem for his service on the school board, 28 years, no one has surpassed that yet. I was the president at the time, and I made a recommendation that we rename a school that was in, I think it's in the Kenmore area, in his honor. And recognizing that certainly we've had a number of people who served on the Akron School Board, but no one had the service like his. And I mention that because we identify a person like Judge Williams not only because of all of the firsts, but here's a man who represented, the first African American to represent Ward 4 as councilman. I think I'm correct in that. And the only African American, to my knowledge, who has ever been a common pleas judge, county judge. And also, Councilwoman Holland reminded me that he was the Attorney General, I guess for the Northern District, or whatever area that was. But when we talk about the housing program in this community, it was Judge Williams that started it for the nation under Alpha. So I think we need to be aware that I don't think we can do enough to recognize a person like this. And we put a person like this name on a building or on a wall or street or whatever. It's a good thing because children begin to ask questions about who is this person. And that's another thing that we need to be mindful of, that we are always trying to put people and their history before our children so that they know that they can someday be as great and honorable as a person like Judge Williams. And so we can probably never name enough in his honor for the things he did for this community and for this nation. And I really would like to move that we pass this legislation. So that is my comment, sir. And I move that we
I still have Mr. Neal's hand up, but I think I still have a few comments outstanding.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just wanted to say I appreciate everyone's comments. But I did want to say how this is an opportunity for us as a council to look at how do we pass our history on to future generations. Because we all walk past buildings that were named long ago, and there are some people who already don't know who Sam Salem is. And I say that to say, you know, we have artwork now where you walk up and scan the QR code and find out a little history behind that artwork. I'm hoping that when the time comes and we place the placard on the building with Judge Williams' bust on it, that we can put a QR code that people can walk up and scan to get the history. And not just of him, but of other things that we've been blessed to be able to honor. I mean, this is a chance for us to put our history so that they won't have to guess. We're now blessed with all the technology that makes that possible. And so I just wanted to mention that because I think it was Ms. Somerville who mentioned, you know, or maybe it was you, Mr. Chairman, about, you know, how did Lawton Street get its name? We have the opportunity now with what we do to put that history where folks can get it because of the technology that we have. And so I'm hoping that when it comes time for us to actually, you know, name the building and put the placard on there, that we can capture the history with the technology that we have in that way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I have another hand raised in the chambers.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilman Fusco has his hand raised.
Mr. Fusco.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Agree with everyone in terms of the amount of respect and appreciation for Judge Williams. No question. I'd known him and worked together on campaigns and a number of initiatives. Nothing but respect for Judge James R. Williams. The thing for me, though, is that, and I recall, and some of us, maybe with a little bit of gray hair, recall the dedication itself and was there, and recall whenever the city committed $600,000 to the project, which, you know, 10 stories, 148 units, which was outstanding. It was a great sunny day out, and it was really stirring remembering that. But given that, and that it, you know, there's few places that are named for folks, but we do, and we have, and we will continue to honor James Williams, Judge James R. Williams, and it's appropriate, very appropriate in terms of the Alpha Phi Alpha, and the city's involvement with that. But I guess we're going to be asking for a vote today. I'll be voting no, just that the city of Akron has spoken through both financial and supporting the renaming and naming the James R. Williams Towers. So I believe there's a motion on the floor, though. I don't know if there is.
Yes, I believe Ms. Amobian. Before we vote, I still would like to know who Mr. Lawton is. I don't want to displace somebody who, and I think Mr. Neal, that's a good idea. QR code, scan us, who were these people? Otherwise, you know, for posterity, we have no way of knowing. I do wish Akron Public Schools, someone could have told us who was Mr. Lawton. So I think Ms. Amobian, you had a motion, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, there was a motion.
Second.
And a motion from Ms. Amobian, and then a second from Mr. Malik. All right. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye. Okay, roll call, please.
Freeman,
Nay.
Fusco,
Nay.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor, Malik.
Aye.
Okay, there were 2 ayes and 3 nays, so the motion does not pass.
Who the name? I couldn't hear.
Yes, the nays were Councilman Freeman, Councilman Fusco, and Councilwoman Connor.
Okay, if there's nothing else to come before us,
Well, with that,
we will adjourn.
can we, I'd like to request a point of order.
2:27.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, there's a point of order here in the chambers.
I'd like to ask the law department, can we make a motion, an adverse on the motion that's already made? Can we make a second motion?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Okay. Very good. And with that, then, I'll recommend an adverse report on the item.
I'm not sure if those of you can hear.
Repeat that for me. I did not pick that up.
Sure, there was a motion by Councilman Fusco for an adverse report.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion for an adverse report. Is there a second?
Aye. There is a second by Councilwoman Connor.
Okay, we have a motion for an adverse report. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The adverse report. All opposed, nay?
Nay.
All right, roll call, please.
Freeman,
For the adverse report.
correct. Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Nay.
Connor. Aye. Malik.
Nay.
This motion passes 3-2.
Okay. We will we'll present the adverse report to council as a whole this evening. And is there anything else to come before us? I don't believe so.
I don't think you can present as council as a whole.
I'm sorry, I was just speaking, our entire council meeting tonight. We're all together. Semantics, so sorry about that. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Our next committee of the day is the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Mosley, Kamer, Holland, Lombardo, and McKittrick. We did have all committee members present. We are missing our chair at the moment. You want to give her a moment to return to chambers? Mr. Kamer, would you be able to chair the Public Service Committee meeting?
Yes,
Okay, whenever you're ready.
ready. I'd like to call the Public Service meeting to order, please. All members are present except for Councilwoman Mosley. We do have two new pieces in front of us, but can I get approval of the minutes from our last meeting, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Moving forward, our first piece is ordinance ratifying the Director of Public Services entrance into contracts with responsible vendors for emergency snow and ice control operations during the two back-to-back major winter storm events in early 2022 and declare an emergency. And I do see we have Chris Leno with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. Yes, obviously we all remember the two storms we had, one in January and one in February. Both storms, and this goes back to the recommendation that the Snow and Ice Committee, one of their recommendations is to mobilize contractors with heavy equipment earlier in the storms, which we did. And we mobilized 6 different contractors. We tried to get a few more, but in that both those storms, with well over a foot of snow in each one, we weren't able to get as many contractors as we'd like to. We will do a little better planning for the next year, but I think what happened with a lot of the smaller contractors, they were so busy doing their own contracts that they were unable to help us. So, like I said, we had 6 different ones help us, and we did finally get all the invoices. Just a couple weeks ago, we put them together, and this legislation will cover that, those contracts. So with that, I will take any questions.
All right, thank you, Chris, and I appreciate this. Obviously, we know the snowstorms are very challenging, and us council members with the phone calls and everything, but I do know, I saw all these contractors in Ward 7 with the big dump trucks in the back, loaders and everything like that, going up and down the street, so I appreciate all that help. Do we have any questions? Oh, we do. I'll go with the first person I saw right when I looked up is Councilman Malik. That's okay.
Mr. Chair, I actually think I was third, so I wanted to defer to Ms. Holland.
Well, I'll go, thank you, Councilwoman Holland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Lovell. I just want to make sure that I'm reading this right. So we're talking about a bill that was incurred for this past winter that in the aggregate totals $540,000. Am I reading that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and this comes under the category of street cleaning, but that's just kind of a misnomer, correct?
Well, under the snow and ice operation, it comes out of the street cleaning assessments. So our budget is always under, that's how we pay for our snow and ice operation. That's where all the salt is purchased through that budget, which is a street cleaning budget. Street cleaning, street sweeping, those assessments that our residents pay, that's where these funds are paid out of for the snow and ice operation. That's why it says street cleaning.
Okay, and so again, just to be clear, I want to make sure that I'm understanding that this bill for $540,000 is only for services that were contracted for between January 16th and February 17th. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
And this just includes contractor fees. Is that right?
Yes, that is the labor, that's the equipment that they had to use to clear the snow in those 2 events.
Okay, $540,000 kind of stood out to me because it's a number that I've seen in another place. Did we have this kind of money or any money actually appear in our operating budget?
I'm not, it's in our regular, it's in our budget every year under the street cleaning, which is the snow and ice operation that you would see. But that number does go up and down based on how much snow we do get a year. Okay, the number that usually doesn't move that much is our salt purchases. So we put a number in there for salt purchase. It goes it's based on the Q rate, and then this year we purchased. We put in a Q price of 25,000 tons, and with that we could either go 20% under that, which we have to purchase at least 20,000 tons, or we can go 20% over at that same price and purchase up to 30,000 to hold that price. So I'm not sure with this 540 if it showed up somewhere else, but the actual price, we rounded it up, but it was $539,145.36 to cover all these contractors' invoices.
Okay, do you know offhand what the preceding year operating budget projection was for street cleaning, including contracting for snow removal?
I do not, but I can get you that number.
Great, that would be great. Thank you, that's all I have for now.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilman Malik?
I think Ms. Amovian was next.
Are you on the committee, Councilman?
I'm not.
Okay. All right, Councilwoman Amovian?
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, Is it typical for us to pay this long after the service is rendered? Does it take that long for them to send the invoice?
Well, we've been after all of them. Some of them sent it right away, and we just got the last invoices just a week ago, or just a little bit over a week ago, because we didn't want to bring these into you piecemeal, so we have been after them. Unfortunately, it probably has taken a little bit longer than we would like, but yes, we just received all their bills. And then it took us time, because we track just to verify when they were out there. We had supervisors, you know, kind of spot checking, making sure that they had that piece of equipment out there as work was going on, and they had to let us know every day that they were going to work or not work. Some of the contractors worked a little bit more than others just because they had the availability. Now, some of these contractors had other work and says, I can give you 2 days, or I can give you 1 day, or I could give you 4 days. So there again, that's why some of these invoices are different between the two storms.
Yeah. Approximately how many contractors are we talking about? And I'm glad to know it's not our delays, the invoices and stuff that hadn't come. So I was glad to hear that, because I know these are small businesses, and I'm sure they rely on the revenue that they can generate. So, but approximately how many contractors are we talking about?
There was 6 different contractors that we used.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I know it was a terrible season when we had the snowstorms, and I know we got criticisms the year before, and I think this time we did a much better job. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilman Malik.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lovell, thank you for all of the information. Thank you also for, you know, all of the efforts that took place during these storms. It feels like many years ago at this point, but I know it's only a couple months, and you know, obviously it was a significant issue for all of our residents. Going off of the questions that my colleagues have asked, do we know how much money we had projected to spend on outside contractors for snow removal this year?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I'll get it for you. Jim Hall may know that number, but I'd rather clear it with him before I give you that number.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that there's a rush. The related question is, and I think Councilwoman Holland asked something similar, but if it would be possible to kind of get the actual expenditures for third-party contractors for snow removal for maybe like the last 2 or 3 years, and then the projected for this year. I definitely understand that it, you know, obviously varies by year. You know, we had 2 very significant snow events this year that we did not in you know, at least probably since 2019. But it would be helpful to get that, so we can have a better understanding of, you know, what we intended to spend coming into this year and what we actually spent. Clearly, it's a significant amount of money that we spent, but obviously we all were also pushing you to get the roads cleared as quickly as possible. So I recognize that balance. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, we'll get that for you. I believe in 2015, 16, and 17, we probably didn't use any. And then, you know, we didn't have any. We didn't have the event where we needed the help, okay? So, but then 2019, we had some, and then 2020, I don't believe we had any. So we can get you those numbers last 6 years, but there again, let's hope we have none next year, okay? Because that means when we have to use contractors, that means we have a foot of snow. Let's not hope that happens again, so.
For many, many years,
yes.
Mr. Lovell, but I guess that's where particularly it would just be helpful to understand how much was projected in the budget for this year.
Okay.
Sarah, do we have somebody in chambers?
We do. We have Councilman Lombardo and Councilman Fusco here in chambers with their hands raised.
All right, Councilman Lombardo, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question and a comment. First, the comment. I just, you know, no matter what we have in the budget, this year, next year, previous years. I mean, if we could predict what Mother Nature is going to deliver to us, then, you know, we'll be, you know, that'll be amazing. But I think the better question is, you know, we can budget so much money, but if there's an overflow, I mean, what bucket would it come out of? And you don't have to answer that now. That's just a comment, you know. But the question is, so we have 6 contractors. Are they on board for next year, or is it just like a annual?
We will start that conversation probably right after June. We'll start talking to them. They did keep their maps from the 2019 year storm, so it was a little bit easier. Right. We did have one contractor, Chaffee Construction, that was not able to help us this year. They went out of business, unfortunately, so we had to kind of shift those resources to another contractor. But still, we're up to their, you know, we're always looking for other contractors to help us out. And we did talk to our new contractor that we have doing our sidewalk program, Timeline Construction. They're in Firestone Park. They said they want to help us next year. Okay, but they weren't really geared up for this previous year to help us. But we did have that conversation. Obviously, we like to hire local first. Minority is real important to us, and Canal helped us out again this year. So the small contractors, but yeah, we are looking, we're not looking forward to snow, but we are looking forward to be prepared for next year.
But maybe the goal, you know, whether it's 6 contractors or you could go to 10, you know, because I know maybe somebody could come back to you and say, well, yeah, I know that's what we said in June, but now we just got this other project that was more guaranteed. You know, the snow isn't guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed. So they can't buy equipment based on if it's going to snow and we're going to hire them, obviously.
Yeah. Yep. So, all right, thank you.
Councilman Fusco?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. January of 19 resulted in a task force that was formed, and I believe President Somerville was on that, as well as a couple of us on council at the time. And the, you know, one of the outcomes was that, you know, one of the things that we maybe could have done a little quicker and earlier in 19 was to add contractors sooner to the mix whenever that storm had occurred in January of 2019. And it's difficult, obviously, we're hearing in terms of budget and budgetarily, you know, how, you know, do you carry, you know, X amount of employees for the worst case scenario, or do you try to adapt and, you know, you know, bring external, you know, other companies, I guess, to come in to help? And there's a limited amount of those companies out there that can actually help in these scenarios, in these situations of moving snow, just a limited amount. So we're thankful for them whenever the emergency occurs, and basically that's what they kind of become, because there's families out there that need to get to the hospital, there's, you know, there's fire, EMS, etc. So yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, that's for sure, whenever we have a tough year like this, but then again, we hope for balance as usual in terms of maybe get a better year next year where we don't have to go to this extent. Thanks.
I mean, one thing to piggyback on that, Councilman, is more than once since 2019, we've been ready to pull the trigger. I mean, we've got the forecast. We're going to get 8 or 10 inches or 12 inches of snow, where we've called them and says, okay, we will let you know. And it seems like it's always on the weekend. I don't know why, but it's on the weekend we get these big snows, and but we'll call you and let you know. So, you know, we're supposed to get a foot and we get 4 inches. I mean, we all seen it happen, and maybe we got lucky, it missed us. It went south of us, it went north of us, but, you know, those contractors have been on call, and we try to give them as much heads up as possible. Sometimes, hey, looks like we're not going to need you. So they have to have that flexibility too.
And the other side of this too is the fact that our employees, the warriors out there, the men and women out there who are driving these trucks sometimes for 12 hours at a time, they get burned out.
They get a little tired.
If they've been pushing snow for several days and then we get hit with a bigger one, bigger storm, I should say. So yeah, it's tough business, that's for sure.
Councilwoman Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that some of my questions have been picked up and addressed by the questions just now. Thank you for that, colleagues. One of the things that I'm interested in understanding, Mr. Lovell, these 6 contractors, are they all billing at the same rate, or do they each have different billing arrangements with the city, if you know?
Pretty much for the equipment, we have a standard rate, and we get those prices from them. So a backhoe's a backhoe, a loader's a loader, that type of thing. Now, they're not all union contractors, but the union rate is the union rate. So a lot of these contractors are the same ones we use for maybe an emergency sewer or emergency water main break. So their rates are established for that operator. You know, so he's not digging a hole, but he's moving snow. So, yeah, their rates are pretty much uniform, yes.
And do we operate on a preference for a union operation or union neutral?
Union neutral.
Okay. I did figure out why the number 540,000 was sticking in my head. I don't think it's a secret that that I'm a fan of things like no mow May. The idea that perhaps we slow our roll when it comes to mowing. And I recall that $540,000 was in our operating budget for mowing. I do, however, understand that when it comes to snow removal, you know, we need to move that snow. One of the things that I've been thinking about, and I think was touched on in a couple of the preceding questions, is whether we can queue up the contractors, and with the exception, of course, of you know, some of the union rate situations, can we negotiate some on-call, I guess, positioning? Can we negotiate some of these arrangements well in advance? Is that something that we're thinking about or exploring so that we've got everybody in place ahead of, I guess, next season? And meanwhile, I will cross my fingers and toes that we don't see another winter like this one.
Well, we talk to them well in advance. That's why we give them the maps of where we would like to deploy them. But there and again, if something catastrophic would happen and they were real busy, let's say with another municipality with a big sewer break, they may not be able to give us as much equipment. You know, we deal with them about a week out because we look at it and says, what were you guys going to have available? Okay, we want you to take this, this, and this. So we do plan ahead, but we can't, you know, 6 months ahead is going to be really tough to really plan ahead, especially in the last couple of years of what their workforce looks like. But these big contractors all have backup equipment, so it doesn't seem to be a problem with the equipment. It's more or less too far out, and we don't want to guarantee them a rate, because if it doesn't happen, then, you know, we don't want to spend money that's not needed.
Sure, I understand. Can you give us a general idea of, I guess, percentages? How much of snow removal is handled on this contractor basis, and how much of it we handle in-house?
Oh, I would say we're well over 90% handling it ourselves, you know. And, you know, 6 inches today and maybe another 6 inches tomorrow, but we always look at the temperatures too. So if it's going to go into a deep freeze, and I think that's what happened in 19, it was well below zero for a few days. But if we know it's 8 inches and tomorrow's going to be 40, we would not call contractors in. We would be able to move that knowing that, you know, Mother Nature's is going to be on our side for the next several days. So we're always looking at that. They're always talking, Jim Hall, you know, it's an ongoing thing, 2 or 3 days, 4 days before the storm, all the way through the storm. So we probably talk to each other a lot more during these storms than we talk to our own family members, but that's the way it is.
Sure, I understand, and I do think it's important for everybody to remember that this really is an art and you know, less a science when you're actually in it and managing it. And, you know, another variable that really hit us this time is that there are federal safety regulations that require drivers to take time off. You know, you can't have somebody in a snowplow for 18 hours straight. Things that I think a lot of folks just don't realize. So, you know, I appreciate the effort that went into getting the roads cleared, and thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Chris, what is your pleasure?
Can we suspend the rules so we can get these companies paid? To Councilwoman Amobian's point, we'd like to get them paid.
Okay. What would like the committee to do?
I'd like to make a
Anybody want to
motion.
make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for a favorable report.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. We'll pass that this evening. Moving on to our next piece is a resolution declaring it necessary to improve Beardsley Street between the termini of Firestone Boulevard and Archwood Avenue by resurfacing, constructing, reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks, and driveway approaches, and installing roof drain pipes, and declaring an emergency. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, on the west side of the new Kenmore Garfield High School, as you said, between Archwood and North Firestone, there's about 800 feet of Beardsley Avenue that we're going to reconstruct, and it'll be new pavement. It's not a full improvement. We're not going all the way down and rebuilding the whole road, so it's basically, we're going down, removing probably at least 4 to 5 inches of the asphalt, rebuilding the road to that point. But it will be new curbs, it will be new street lawn, it will be new street trees, it will be new sidewalks in that stretch along the high school. And this is basically just the first piece of legislation. We will come back to you once we bid this project, which is going to be real soon. So this is to start the assessment process on those improvements for this stretch of road.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Anything in council chambers, Sarah?
There are no hands raised here in chambers.
Chris, what is your pleasure?
I think Councilman Malik has his hand up.
Councilman Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Waddell, I guess the one question that I had was, you know, when do you expect this work to be done, and do we hope to do it in the summer to minimize any, you know, inconvenience to the neighborhood during, you know, the school year?
Our goal is to get this done by the time school open, which it looks like we're not going to make it, but we will maintain traffic through this. I'm hoping to get the pavement done and the curb, and then do the stuff behind the curb once school starts. So this project, we want it to start. It's out for bid. We're really hoping it starts, and it's not a real long stretch, so it's not going to take a long time, at least to get the curb slipped and get the roadway done.
Okay, how long do you expect that each of the phases is going to last?
Well, we're hoping this whole project, really hoping this project, we wrap up in November, way before the weather gets bad.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Chris, what was your pleasure on this one?
Consent's fine.
All right. Can I get a motion for consent, please?
Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. That was our two pieces today. Nothing else come before us. We're adjourned.
Our next committee is the Public Utilities and Green Committee meeting. Those committee members are Freeman, McKittrick, Connor, Mosley, and Holland. Looks like we do have all members present. Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have all members present except for Mosley, whenever you're ready.
Okay, very good. We will call the Public Utilities and Green Committee meeting to order. If I could have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Give a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
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 All right, very good. We have, let's see here, we have one item coming before us, and this is an ordinance ratifying the Director of Public Service hiring of a contractor for the emergency removal of lead water services and replacement with safe piping throughout the city prior to street resurfacing and declaring an emergency. And would this be Mr. Lovell?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. Last year, I think we talked about lead services, and we were going to do as many with our own City of Akron staff as possible ahead of the resurfacing. With the water main breaks we had earlier in the year and doing that with our own staff, we weren't able to get all these lead services ahead of the resurfacing. So we went to the resurfacing contractor because they controlled the schedule, and we asked them to look at giving us a price on removing these 81 lead services in the resurfacing limits. So these lead services that were removed, 54 were to existing homes or businesses, mostly all residential, and then the other 27 were to either abandoned properties or properties that were not buildable that we will never put a house or a structure on. So we knew to leave that under a resurfaced road would be foolish, so we had them do those 27. So the price that we got, a time and material price out of them, we have about what we're figuring, looking at this year's prices that we're using ARPA money, we saved about $100,000 last year by doing this, and like I said, they got it done ahead of the resurfacing. So these lead services were all over the city. We did a lot ourselves, but it was in Ward 1, 3, 5, 7, and 10 where these services were located, and a lot were in 3 and 5. And then we did have Wilbur Avenue in Ward 7 where we took a lot of the lead services out. So with that being said, to Councilwoman Mobian's point last, we just got the bill from them. This was work that they did last fall, and we finally received this invoice from them, so that's why we're here today, to get them paid. So with that, I will take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Looking around my screen here for any questions or any comments. Okay, Mr. Malley.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lovell, just 2 questions. I guess one is a comment. The amount here, it's just around $200,000. Am I correct? Like, that seems like a very low figure.
It is. Like I said, last year when we did this, copper was $3 a foot, now it's $8 a foot. So what we're seeing for lead services, if you did the math, this averages out to a little over $3,000 a lead service, where now we're getting prices which is about double that. Now, one of the things that made this more economical was that we were going to resurface the street almost straight away after the work was done. So the resurfacing contractor did not have to put the top coat of pavement on when they did the lead service. They brought it up with concrete within an inch, and then they resurfaced the whole street over it. So that's why it's cheaper than the lead service prices we're getting this year. One, copper prices are almost triple this year, and they controlled the restoration, which was a big portion of this project.
Thank you very much, Paul. Just want to thank the service department for, the thoughtful way in which this was approached.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. We especially appreciate the timeliness of getting this work done before a street is paved. That makes everybody happy, so. All right, are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Lovell, what would be your pleasure on this?
Consent's fine.
Okay, we have a motion for consent, please.
Motion for consent?
Motion from Councilwoman Holland, is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor of placing this item on the consent agenda, please let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. We will see that that item is placed on the consent agenda. Thank you, Mr. Lovell. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Our final committee of the day is the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo. Looks like we do have all members present. Some may just be connecting to video still. But whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. We'll call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Thanks everybody for being present. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes from last week's meeting, if we could, please.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have one piece coming before us. This is an ordinance authorizing an agreement between the Fraternal Order of Police, Akron Lodge Number 7 Bargaining Unit, and the City of Akron regarding employee wage increases through calendar year 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a 3-year agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police for all of our uniformed police officers. It will provide for a cost of living increases of 4% for 2022, 4% for 2023, and then 3% in 2024. So this is a product of several months of negotiating with the Fraternal Order of Police, with Mr. Williams, and many people from the city, from our law department. We feel that this is going to make our wages for our police department competitive with a lot of other cities, especially in these kind of inflationary times where everything is costing more. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I see Ms. Amobian. Her hand is raised, please.
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Fricker earlier today, and he answered most of my questions, and I would assume that council members may have had the same questions, so I'll just throw them out. I essentially wanted to know exactly what changes were, and essentially they are wages and some minor health care things, I think he said. I also wanted to know, once we pass this 4, 4, and 3, would it be sustainable? He mentioned that, again, it depends on what we generate in tax revenue and so forth, but right now we're going to have to use some of the ARPA money to pass this. So I appreciated his honesty and the fact that, we want to keep as many of our good employees as possible, and holding on to police officers and others is becoming much more competitive these days, and we sometimes have to do the things we have to do with whatever resources we have. And I don't know, Mr. Fricker, if you want to add to anything I said or correct me if I said something incorrectly.
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. One of the other aspects of this agreement was, as Councilwoman Amobian said, was with health care. So under this agreement, there will be no changes for 2022, but beginning in 2023, we're moving to a premium contribution, which is a percentage of total health care costs. So we've always had, now there is a cap on it as well, but so starting in 2023, the police employees will pay for 9% of the healthcare costs, with a cap of $160 per month for family and $65 for single. And then in 2024, it will be 10% of healthcare costs, with a cap of $180 for family and $70 for single. So that was the other major aspect of this agreement, was the changes in the premium contributions for healthcare.
Thank you for that response. Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fricker, the only changes that were mentioned in the ordinance were regarding wage increases. Would it be possible to get a copy of the agreement and to be able to, see what other changes were made? You mentioned this healthcare change.
Yes, that would be possible, yes.
Okay. And are there other changes beyond this healthcare change?
There's a couple minor things. One of the things that we did was we decreased the number of, when an officer is promoted to a sergeant or to a lieutenant, there used to be 3 different pay steps before the person, once they were promoted to when they got to the top of that job class. That's being moved down to just one single step. So they'll basically get a raise when they get promoted, and then they'll get another raise the following year, and then they'll be at the top of their step. So that was the other, and that's a fairly minor, in terms of the financial impact is a fairly minor one, but it will allow our officers to reach the top of their step in a quicker, in 2 years, basically.
Thank you, Mr. Fricker. I think 2 more questions. First, I know that, maybe 2 months ago, we looked at the agreement, I believe it was with AFSCME, and I believe that it was a 3.25% increase for this year on a 1-year extension of the contract. I guess, can you kind of broadly characterize the thought process behind kind of a 3.25% increase for 1 year versus this, which has 3 years, and the first two are at 3%, and the third year is at 4%?
It was just based on a lot of factors with the negotiations with the 2 different unions. We ended up with 2 different outcomes. So it was just a different negotiation with the FOP versus with the AFSCME bargaining unit.
Okay. And I want to make it very clear that I absolutely think that, every city employee deserves, adequate pay for their work. And so, I absolutely think that these increases here are appropriate. But I think I actually may have flipped it's 4% increase for the first 2 years and 3% increase in the third year.
Correct.
I guess the third question, we know we've seen this across the country with regard to public safety and police accountability and civilian oversight. Often there are concerns that civilian oversight reforms sometimes come up against provisions of a police contract, and there have been recommendations from City Council and also from the Racial Equity and Social Justice Task Force of the city regarding the importance of putting in place a civilian oversight board. Was the question of whether a civilian oversight board would conflict with the existing bargaining agreement part of the city's discussion in any of those negotiations?
So I cannot really speak to that specific discussion, as I was only involved really with the more the financial areas of the contract.
Sure. I guess since we're being asked to approve the agreement, would it be possible for Mr. Williams or someone else to speak to that?
Hello. As far as that, during the course of the negotiation, I mean, there was many things that were brought up during the course of the negotiations that dealt with a lot of the concerns that were brought to the table, but at the final outcome, the CBA, we did not agree to any kind of language in this collective bargaining agreement that would address your concerns. I guess I don't know if that's what you're wondering, if anything was in there.
Sure, I appreciate that. I guess just as a follow-up, does the city administration believe that there's anything in the current agreement that would prevent us from implementing a civilian oversight board that would, review investigations and things like that, not imposing discipline, but, an external form of review? Because I think it's important that we have clarity on that, if this is an agreement that's going to bind us for the next 3 years, and this is a recommendation that's, been made by the community and by the committee that was empowered by council and the mayor to opine on these issues.
Well, I don't know, again, this is, I think we're bringing this to council for approval for the wage increase for the FOP members, not necessarily the rest of the language that was in the contract. Without knowing what kind of language you're thinking about or what is being sought after for a civilian review board, I'm sure there will be items within the collective bargaining agreement that will probably be in conflict with certain aspects, but I don't know exactly what kind of, without knowing the specifics of any kind of review board, I couldn't comment.
Well, I guess, and again, I'm not trying to be, litigious, Mr. Williams, but I think that's exactly my point, which is that I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that this piece of legislation authorizes the administration to enter into an agreement with the FOP for the entire contract, not just for a financial piece, right? This is the approval of the contract for the next 3 years. And again, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but the recommendation to have a civilian oversight board was part of the Racial Equity and Social Justice Task Force approved by the mayor, and empowered by the mayor. So my question is, was that recommendation part of the discussion, in part of the city's, calculus in entering into this negotiation? If it seems like there are provisions within this agreement that would prevent us from implementing that within the next 3 years, it would be, in my mind, unless we're all agreeing right now that we don't think we should go in that direction in the next 3 years, it would seem appropriate for there to be some sense of understanding as to what would be permitted and what would be not before we approve this. Again, otherwise we are kind of punting on the idea of doing this in the next 3 years. I guess that's my concern. It sounds like maybe this is not something we can get a clear answer on today, but it would seem very much that that's something that should be addressed, given that this is a significant recommendation being made by a group that council and the mayor have empowered. Do you follow my reasoning there?
I'm trying to, yes. All I can tell you is that there's a lot of discussions that go on during the course of this negotiation. So I can't remember every detail, but there were conversations about every aspect and every concern brought on by the city and negotiated at the table. The final legislation that we had, or the final agreement that we agreed with the Fraternal Order of Police, had some changes in the language, but I don't think any of the language in the contract or the proposed contract addresses anything that has to do with the Civilian Review Board, no.
Chairman Freeman, if I may. Gert Wilms.
Yes.
Hi, Gert Wilms, Chief of Staff. Mr. Malik, we can have somebody from the Law Department reach out to you to answer those specific questions and perhaps get an email out to all of council to address your concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Holmes. That would be great. And, I might also entreat that the two of us might be able to speak about it as well, if you might be able to.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Wells. Ms. Amobian.
The point I was going to raise, if the contract doesn't speak to it or doesn't address it at all, I'm of the opinion then that we have our opportunity and our authority to implement these things. I don't anticipate that FOP is going to be happy or embracing this kind of oversight, but if the contract doesn't speak to it, it seems to me that we still have the authority to do it. And that's just my non-legal opinion of, if things are not addressed in writing, then I'm of the opinion that you still have the authority, if if we do, and we do have that authority, I believe. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malik, your hand is up again. I'm not sure if you have another question or if your hand is still up.
Yes, I'm just very talkative this afternoon, Mr. Chair.
How much coffee did you have today, Mr. Malik?
This is the thing, Mr. Chair. The last day of Ramadan was yesterday, and so I'm back to coffee, and so this is the
Exactly.
going up today. Just briefly, so that we have the opportunity to review some of these healthcare clauses, and also so we get a little bit more clarity on this civilian review question, I would make a motion for time, just caveating that, in my view, these wage changes are perfectly appropriate and well-deserved.
Very good. And I think, Mr. Fricker, you can get, Mr. Malik had referred to, you said there were some changes with healthcare. I'm assuming you could get all of that to all of us, to all 13 members.
Certainly.
Okay. There is a motion. If there's no other discussion, there is a motion to refer this item. Do I have a second?
Well, I'm willing to second it. If Mr. Fricker, is this what you were thinking about, or you did not have an opinion?
In terms of whether we take an additional week?
That could be. It could be more, but more than likely, if we get all the information that's being requested, I would think a week would be enough. I would think. I'm not sure.
And so I think we have two issues. The one was a question about some of the minor healthcare changes, but then to Mr. Malik's point, the idea of does the contract, does it negate the idea of having a citizen involvement board? I think that might be the bigger of the two issues we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I'm willing to second it, but again, I don't think the FOP is going to be happy about any of this, and they may or may not have it in the contract, but I don't think that takes the authority away from us.
Right. Well, I know the council, we're forbidden, to be involved with the actual negotiation of contract. We can certainly, before we pass it, we can find out what does it say, and we'll be passing it with knowledge then, and not blindly. So we'll look to you gentlemen for that.
I second the time.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to refer this item. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Freeman.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Baylor. Councilwoman Baylor, you're muted.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1.
Okay, very good. All right, we look forward to discussion next week, and there's nothing else to come before us. And with that, we are adjourned. Thanks to each and every one of you. Thank you.
That is the final committee meeting of the day. Council will convene in special session tonight at 6 o'clock and regular session tonight at 7 o'clock.